Hey guys. Happy Tuesday. Just waiting for you guys to pile in. Normal stuff. What's going on? Hello, everyone. Heck yeah. Efren's first. Efren's pretty quick. I think he's got Efren, I think you're up at the top for being ready to go. Jose's in the chat. What's up, Jose? Let's see here. Oh, my shoulders hurt. What's up, Logan? All right, guys. How was your weekends? I am going to probably... Let me close that. I feel like today was fast and long all at the same time. You had to put your PC to sleep overnight to render the Cinema 4D text project? Yeah. So, did you use the viewport render or did you use the standard render? Let's go into this real quick. Sweet, getting a new PC. Do you know what kind? Are you going to build it? Let's go in here. Yeah, Jose, tell me, also, did you use Redshift materials and lighting and stuff, or did you use, like, standard materials and lighting? You use the viewport? Man, that shouldn't take that long. Scene has been upgraded to the latest format. Required Redshift when save the scene will be... Okay. Opened on this side here. You did the viewport render, huh? How many frames? You should have only 5 seconds. And did you use viewport? Did you use a Redshift? Use standard materials? Man, what time? How long did it take total? And then also, what kind of computer are you on? I'm curious about these things. Yeah. Like this is the Redshift render. I probably want to do viewport render. PNG. Filter. Geometry only. Show shadows, reflections. Transparency. Pre-built. Shows the components. NVIDIA 4060 Ti. Oh, that's good. Yeah. The Intel Core i7. That's perfectly fine. That works great. That's a good, that'll be a powerful computer, powerful machine. A Dell PC, I use my laptop for live streams. So the Dell PC is likely going to have an integrated, you might want to, so, okay, here's what you guys can do. I don't think I talked about render farms in class yet. But essentially what a render farm is, right, is, I mean, like, you got to think of these massive studios that are putting out Pixar, Netflix, animated series, DreamWorks type stuff. Or, you know, like take all those renders and then put them into the long form format, which would be a long video. Well, we don't have the luxury of render farms. Let's see if... Render farm pricing. I'm just checking this. Uh, I am just curious because it'll tell you how fast you could, like, you put in information, you're like, I need it done this fast. I wouldn't do this if I were you guys because I mean, why would you want to pay to render out your schoolwork? But I was gonna check with the Dell PC. Um Anyways, back to the render farm thing. They, they utilize this to essentially get 3 or 4 times the work done in a short period of time, right? Well, if you have a couple computers at home that can render out, one can render out part of it, the project, and the other can render out the other, that'd be great. You would just have to have like the project on one computer and the other at the same time. So a copy would have to be there and then you could render it out in sections. So if you're having a hard time, Jose, you can try that. Um, it's, I think your Dell might have an integrated um, graphics card. So you're probably going to have a lot of issues with that, especially if you're trying in the viewport render and you're still getting problems, then definitely would consider using your laptop if your laptop's more powerful. The other thing that you guys can do, right, is you can kind of create your own render farm at school. If you show up to the lab, like in the one classroom, and you if there's no one in there and you can utilize a couple computers to render out different frames at a time and kind of create your own render farm. I would maybe not use more than 2 or 3 computers, depending on how many people are in that. You know, obviously, if there's going to be a class starting or if there's a class in there, you guys can't necessarily do that. But, if there's no one in there, you guys might be able to use that opportunity to create like a little mini render farm as long as you can log into more computers at once with your username. I don't know. I haven't been on campus in a while to do that, so I'm not quite sure. But Logan says, sorry for the late response. I'm just going on a walk. I'll be away from the computer for a bit. That's okay. Hi, I just want to say my school laptop just randomly decided not to connect to my home Wi-Fi no matter what. I don't know why I did that, but I'm just going to get an Ethernet cable. Not a problem, Gavin. Yeah, dude, don't worry. If you can't stream now, if you can't make the live stream, it's not a big deal, right? Like I use your participation grades as attendance. So, and if you're turning in the projects, I know you're watching the lessons. So it's not a big deal if you guys have to do that. But yeah, so rendering is going to be, it seems to be an issue for several people in the class. It usually is every semester. If you're struggling already at using Cinema 4D on a computer you thought would work, then you might have to go in and use the labs, right? This is the thing that is kind of the downfall of this hard softwares heavy duty softwares, right? Is they don't just run on any old computer. And so, if you understand not everyone has the funds to just easily go out and buy a new computer, new parts for their computer. That's not realistic in most cases, which is fine. Just at that point, you kind of have to bite the bullet and show up at school and do work at campus if you want to continue this class, right? Because a majority of our project is pretty much split down the middle between Cinema 4D and After Effects projects. And so you're going to continue to have more, and the less work that you get done on time, the more you're going to fall behind. And you definitely don't want that to happen, right? Because if you can get your project completed at home and then just take it to school and render it, that would be cool if you could do that. Because you might be stuck at school for a little while it's rendering out your stuff. But sometimes we just have to do what we need to do to get stuff done. And I said, I was saying, if not, maybe it's possible that you could take it a different semester when you can either A, afford the equipment, or B, get a rental from the school. I was mentioning to someone today that the rentals, you might as well, might be worth calling the school again to see if there's any available, because kids consistently withdraw from classes throughout the semester. And so if they had a rental computer, maybe they've returned it, right, for someone else to use. So might be worth checking that out again in case you guys are struggling with the computers that you're using so far. Because if you were using Redshift Jose stuff, then I would be like, okay, yeah, let's shoot to using standard materials, standard, all that kind of stuff. But since you're already using standard materials, standard lighting, all that stuff, and you're rendering in the viewport renderer and the computer's struggling, that's like the base layer of being able to render inside of Cinema 4D. And unfortunately, it's just going to get more complex than that. So, couple things to consider for you guys if you are struggling using the software. And, you'll just have to make a decision at some point. Let me do something here. Okay. Perfect. So today we are actually going to go through your typography projects. Let's save the changes there. Yes. We're going to look through the ones that have been submitted so far. I'm going to give some grades on those. And then maybe a little bit after. Let's actually do that. Let's opposite of this. So we're going to start with just kind of showing you guys a little bit of modeling techniques inside of Cinema 4D. If you want to go back and work inside of your realistic scene, because I know we didn't get to the realistic scene on Thursday, but I wanted to show you guys a couple little modeling, very simplistic, like solid object modeling techniques to kind of create a room and maybe create a more unique shaped room if you want to. And also to use the asset browser with those kind of things. So let's kind of look through that first, maybe for the first 45 minutes, and then around 7 o'clock we'll jump into reviewing student projects for the typography one. Let's go to the real 3D Cinema 4D files, right? So here was my surreal scene. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this template again. Oops, I hacks. Let's copy this template. Control C. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to Control V to paste it. And then I'm going to rename it to... Come on. Akira _ 2024 realism. Let's see. There we go. And I'm going to open this up. Oh, not the surreal one. I want to open the realism scene. It moved. Do you guys have any questions about like what I just went over as far as the computer issues that I'm noticing? Also, if you guys are having trouble rendering, right, I would consider utilizing Bell still, or making an appointment with me when we can jump on a quick call through Discord and maybe fix any of the issues that you're coming into. So like that's always a possibility, right? But we just have to schedule that so I can move it into my schedule when I have any time to do so. Even if it's on a weekend and we have to do that, as long as I'm available, I can try and do that for you guys, but you'll want to schedule it before the weekend so I can at least see the message. I feel dry today. Okay, so I've got this open. Let's open the realism scene, which is just going to be this right now. I'm going to close this out. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Let me shut off my camera so that we can focus in the software. And the first thing that I want to do is, because, the difference between the surrealism scene and the realism scene when you're looking on Canvas. Let me go to Canvas real quick and we can open these up. When I bring this over here, and I've already had several submissions right now, so if you guys watch this and want to do something else, you guys can always do that, or update it if you want to, because you have up until the 26th to submit it. So if you guys make changes in between, then you guys can always resubmit. But if you look at the scene right here, it's obviously two walls and a floor, which would make your mind fill in the blanks, right? So you don't want to have, um, when looking at these shots, you want to make sure that it's pushing in all the way and that you're not seeing the edges of your walls, because we might not have all four walls surrounding us in this scene, right? It might just be two walls, but the way that we're pushed in on the shot, you can't tell. And your mind automatically kind of fills in the blank that, oh, we're inside of a room that's four walls. Like, you don't think that this isn't a complete room behind the camera, right? The more stuff that you have in it, the more complete that this room is going to look. And so I would even add more stuff than this into here if I would have time. You know, obviously it's based on what we have time in class here, but and when you look at the surrealism scene, what you see is like a nice smooth background, and that's where that backdrop really comes in handy. But for the realism scene, that's not going to work great. So how can we create for or essentially two walls and a floor there? I'm actually going to start off with this cube, and I'm going to delete the backdrop, the studio backdrop. Let me see here. In fact, yeah, let's just fully delete that. And I'm just going to take the cube and let's hide the rest of this stuff, just so we're not, maybe just the entire studio. There we go. Just hide that off to the side. And just make sure I'm not looking through my camera, which I'm not. If I go to click my camera, it's a front-facing view. Okay. So I'm going to select my cube object here. And the first thing that I want to do is maybe modify this shape, right? So that we can start with the floor and kind of just build our way up with the entire room. And so when you're initially, when you have a primitive, when it's just one of these shapes specifically from the menu right here, and we haven't made this editable, which means that we can't like click the sides or any of the edges to make changes. You get this option where these little tiny, let me zoom in here, yellow dots that are like where the coordinates are on the access point, right? And those allow you to transform the shape. If you click and drag on those, it allows you to transform the shape without changing it from a primitive, right? So we can, that's, you know, beneficial in a lot of different ways, but right now that's just makes it easy for us to grab that side, make the y-axis smaller, extend the z-axis, extend the x-axis out this way. So we have this essentially shape. I believe that this one has, is this one, it's got rounded edges already, which is nice, right? Because we added the fillet on there. So it's got, instead of a hard angled edge that it comes up to, it's going to have multiple edges that wrap around that are going to give it like a rounded shape. And we'll look at those a little bit more here. In fact, that might not be a great idea just quite yet, right? Especially because we're not going to see that edge just quite yet, or we don't know what, if we're going to see any edges. We shouldn't see any edges of the floor or the walls. So I'm actually going to shut that fillet edge off so that I do have that nice hard 90-degree angled edge here from each side coming into each other, because we're going to essentially create geometry on two of these edges, and we're going to extrude those edges upwards to create two walls. So in order to do that, we can't just click these faces. We have to make this object editable. And so if you select your primitive over here in the object panel and you hit C on your keyboard for cat, it is going to change the way that icon looks, because now this is an editable object. It's just looking at it as parts and pieces, versus before when it was a primitive, it looked at it as like a whole object, right? And so When you do that, you actually have the option to change your selection mode right up here. I know we briefly talked about these, but here's point mode, we have edge mode, we have polygon mode, which are like the faces of it. We're usually always in object mode initially, and then here is working in like your UV mapping texturing mode. And so we're gonna grab we want to grab two faces essentially of this because we're going to be extruding these out. And so you want to grab the face tool up here, right? Or polygon tool. And when you start clicking on any of the faces, I call them faces, they're known as polygons. But when you grab them, they highlight and turn yellow, which allows you to know, oh, I've grabbed that side, right? Well, if you hold down shift and you click, you can grab multiple edges on your object. So if I click out here and we look in our quadrant view right here, we can see from the top I have a top face and then I have a couple side faces selected. Now, the extrude tool is funny in the fact that it only works in certain ways, right? So if I go to this point mode here and I can select, if I grab my selection tool right up here, also not number 9, right? If I grab and I can select holding down shift different points of my object once it's editable, and I can grab and move those as well the same way, right? If I only grab one of these and I start to move this out, it's going to change the shape of the object in a different way. Now, when I go to up here, there's a drop-down menu for mesh, and this is where your extrude tool is. And we can extrude the object. And that's great, but we can't actually inset the object. So what if we wanted to extrude the object out, that's great, but what if we wanted to kind of cut into that object and maybe extrude inwards, right? You unfortunately don't have that option with the inset here with this point mode. Now, if I put this in edge mode and we click mesh and we look, we still don't have that inset option there. But if I go into my polygon mode and we click mesh, all of a sudden we actually have these options right here. Now, if I were to, so the mesh tool tends to work well with the polygon mode mostly, but you can use it with other ones. You just might have to remember, oh, I have to switch my mode if this is going to work. Now, if I select this, let's actually select an edge here. And if you notice when I drop this menu down, there's these letters next to these. These are the shortcuts. So if I were to hit M as in Mary on my keyboard, what's going to come up is a menu of all the things that we can use within that mesh tool, right? And so if you kind of go down, if I move my mouse, that tool goes away. So I can't exactly, I can do this though. There we go. So if you look all the way down here, you've got a bunch of different options. And we're looking for extrude right here. So if you wanted to just remember the shortcut, it's M and then T, right? So if I hit MT in quick succession, you can see that my tool changes on, oh, unfortunately I can't zoom in on the tool there, but I get this little box that's next to my mouse. And so now when I click and drag this out, right, just clicking and dragging, you notice that it creates like this another section. All of a sudden it adds geometry to my object. If I were to grab this edge right here and still having my extrude tool selected, and I were to grab and click and drag, right, it can go in, but this is not good geometry here. You always, if you're going to extrude, you want to go out, right? And the reason being is because what happens is when polygons are pretty much sharing the same space in the world. So think of them literally right on top of each other. And then your camera or your view fights, or the computer fights to decide which one should be visible. And so usually what happens is you end up with funny looking geometry or things that don't render out properly when you go to render it. And so making sure that you just, you want to extrude outwards when you're doing this sort of thing, right? That's what what's important. Now, if you did want to go inwards and maybe create like something that drops down in, like what if we had a drop down floor, right? If I hit M on my keyboard, it looks like inset is W. So M is in Mary, W is in windbreaker. And so if I click and drag, all of a sudden we have more polygons being created on the outside to create this new section. And then I can just hit E on my keyboard to get to the move tool and just bring that down in. And then all of a sudden you have like this. You have to be conscious of how the depth of your object is, right? So if I go into this 4-corner mode here, it's probably best that I would change the depth right here with my in my right view, because I can see that obviously it's already halfway down there. And then if I wanted to get really close to that edge, I can do that inside of this view here. And then when we go to look at our object, it is actually inset. If I rendered this out, you can see that there's kind of like this little beveling happening. Great picture frame looking type object right here, right? And so this option, or you could take this and you can bring it up the opposite way, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can use that and get a lot of mileage out of essentially your extrude and your inset tool. Now this one here, let's see what the thicken one does. I don't use this one too often. So it thickens that those polygons up, which is really actually kind of cool. We could use that instead of the extrude. But what it looks like is happening with this one is that it's going on an angle out and up. So when it thickens it, it's not just thickening this object vertically in the air. It's actually kind of going like, it's kind of going at an angle up and out. So you just want to be wary of those type of things. That's why it's always good to kind of just change your views every once in a while and see, okay, what's going on here? What's it looking like when I do this? Those type of things, right? And so now these are connected with each other. Everything's connected. So if I just click and drag and move these around, I can update the way that my object looks. And it's important when you're moving objects inside of, and I'll say this again because I know I've said it before, but when you're inside of Cinema 4D and you're ever rotating, you are, because you can rotate these objects, right? Or you're scaling the object and making it smaller, or you're moving something, right? It's important to grab edges, right? Grab these little bars and stuff on your, I like to call it's called like a gizmo, or the rotational devices and the move axis and all that kind of stuff. Like those, you want to just grab one at a time and move it like that. You can grab these, which allows you to move 2 different coordinates at one time. But like I said, it's just best to work slow when it comes to modeling stuff and be precise. And so, getting a lot of mileage out of this is going to be cool in this particular assignment, because you can make like a really cool shaped room. And so we're just going to start from the beginning. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a cube here. I am going to select, let's put that under our studio. And let's go back. Right now I'm not seeing those 2 little yellow dots because I'm actually in polygon mode, and because this is a primitive, it won't work in this mode. It's only going to work in object mode. So I have to change this, and then all of a sudden I get these 2 yellow bars back, and then I'm going to just make this skinny, bring this one out a little bit more, bring it out this way a little bit more, and we will start with our room from there. Let me zoom out. We're going to make this object editable by hitting C. What's up, Eric? I'm sorry I didn't see that. You were in the chat. How you doing today? I'm going to grab these 2 edges here, and then let's select the bevel the extrude tool, and just click and drag out this way. Probably not that thick. These are going to be our walls, and so the walls don't have to be extremely thick here. And then I'm just going to grab my selection tool up here, which is also number 9 on your keyboard. And I'm just going to grab these. You want to make sure you're only grabbing the ones that you want, and I held down shift, and instead of we need to extrude upwards. So actually let's take the entire object, the entire cube, and rotate this a little bit. Let's rotate it 180 degrees so that the walls are, when we look through our camera, like the walls will kind of be like catty corner in the corner of the room. And so I've got these edges selected right over here, right? And I've only got the top sections selected. And then same with the extrude tool, MW, and I'm sorry, MT, right? And you can tell your little tool shows up next to your mouse, and so you can tell if you have the right one or not. I realized I had the wrong one there, so I had to change it. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag, and that's going to extrude my walls. And so now I have a room, right? Let me see here if we can, let's click off of this real quick. And let's actually select, what do I want to do here? I want to maybe create some more geometry. Let's see, but how do I want to do this? I think this is going to be a nicer looking room for you guys. You can always add, right? So you can add stuff to essentially make your own table if you wanted to, you know, to customize the shape for you. So you can take this cube, go back into your model mode or object mode, and maybe we're going to make the desktop, right? So you can go like this. We're going to bring it out a little bit more. Maybe the desk is a little bit extra longer. And let's see here. Let's bring this upwards. We can rename this table. We can rename the cube to room. Let's drag the table down here. Maybe I would name this room walls and floor, just so I know right away what I'm grabbing. Right. I'm gonna grab my little table here. Let us create some maybe loop cuts. So I'm gonna make this editable by hitting C, Shift C, because I need to look this up. I forget the loop cut, loop selection. Loop path cut is KL. Okay, cool. So basically I want to divide my table up a little bit so I have some polygons on the bottom that I can extrude down to become the table legs, right? So if I were to, let's hide this room real quick. So we're just kind of focusing on the table. And if I were to go into a different view here, all four views, I can see maybe a little bit easier what I want to do here. And so because this object is editable now, I'm going to go into my edge mode here, and I'm going to hit, I believe it said L on my keyboard. Let me see what it was again. Mesh. Not line cut. Under cut here, under modify and then cut, you can see that there's a loop path cut, which is KL. In fact, let's just hit that right now, K, and we want to do not a plane cut, right? Planes are your polygons, but we want to do a line cut. So let me grab there, and I'm actually going to create one here, and that's going to create a cut as a loop. around my object, and then I'm also going to go right there, and then I'm also going to probably come in this way, and what do I want to do here? How big do I want that? Actually, let's give ourselves a little bit more room. First of all, let's go back into our object mode and hit 9 on the keyboard to go back to our selection tool. And let's make sure that this entire table is an appropriate size. I want to make sure it's even. So I'm actually going to grab this grab my face tool, grab the side here, edge there, and then I'm going to drag this out a little bit. Oh, come on, did that not? Let me undo that. Go back into this view here. Okay, I'm going to select it on there. It's because I accidentally clicked onto my access tool, so I don't want to grab that. I just want to grab this, right? I'm going to extend that out. Let's go back into these 4 views so that I can just I just want to line it up with this graph here, right? And then if I move, zoom, rotate here and select this one, only this one, nope, there we go. I'm just gonna drag this one right there and do the same this way. I could also technically just move the object and line it up that way, but I'm already going my own way. Whichever way works for you is okay. All right. Expediency is best, so whatever's easiest for you guys. Grab that there. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to take that KL loop cut, and I'm going to create, I'm going to take essentially 2 of these little squares, and I'm going to make these 4 squares. I'm going to go in 2 squares, cut, go in this way, go down this way, 2 squares over, and then I'm going to cut. Same over here, 2 squares over from the end and make a cut. And then finally up this way, cut. And then I'm going to look at, this is the top. We can always change this from, how do I want to do it? Let's go in this way, and we're going to look underneath the object. And I'm going to hit 9 on my keyboard to grab my selection tool. I'm going to grab this one, hold down shift, grab this one, this one, this one. Let's take our bevel tool, which is M and T. I'm sorry, not bevel, but actually want to inner extrude, so M and then W. I want to make like insets, right? Just like that. Maybe even a little bit more. All right, and then we want to extrude them out now to create the legs, right? So M and then T finally, and then I'm going to click that way and extrude these legs out. And if I show my room now, I can see where, whoa, I have turned myself all around. Let's just move back over this way, zoom out a little, zoom back in. In fact, I don't even think that if I go back to my selection tool and grab my object, right? Because I don't want to grab any faces right now. I want to just grab the object as a whole. And then I drag this object up. I can see that my legs are kind of long. So it might be worth shortening those legs a little bit, but just for the class's sake, this will be okay. So then I can move this table up over this way. But let's say we wanted to create like, I guess like a window inside, like on our wall, right? I could grab my room, go back into my polygon mode. I can select this. Well, in fact, I'm going to want to make sure. Actually, a better way to do this is different. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially create a cube or a window shape right here out of a cube. And we're going to intersect those two objects. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use that cube to essentially what is like cutting a hole inside of this wall. So I'm going to, let's create that cube here. I'm going to drag it over this way. I'm going to go back into my 4 views, and then I want to look on my, I think it's my left side. Which side do I want to look at? This side will work, the front view. Right. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit here, and you can see that my wall, right? My walls are here, the floor is here, we've got the table right there. And this cube, I want to select this cube right here, and I'm going to drag it upwards. And probably right about here, like maybe what would be a foot from the ceiling at the top. And I want to make sure that I am in object mode here. And we're going to kind of make this a little bit skinnier and then move it over a little bit more. And then we want to make it longer. It's a kind of taller window. Move it right about there. I'm going to extend this out just a little bit more so I can see it out of the walls. Maria, sorry, just logged in. Completely forgot we had a live stream today. That is okay. We are just doing some modeling. A little bit of like basic modeling right now for the realism scene. If you already did it, that's fine. This is just kind of a different way to build a little room here for you guys if you want to build up the room a little bit, right? And so we've got this, we're adding a window to our essentially like our room right now. I actually want to go back into the right mode so you can see how like long I want this to be, right? Here's our, we're looking essentially at our wall right now, the right side of the thing. And so here's our second wall. And I just want to extend this out a little bit and center it kind of within the walls. So make sure there's about the similar distance from that side and that side. I'm going to, I think it's actually pretty good right where it was. And then maybe we just bring this up a little bit. There we go. And so I'm going to go back into this view here. And we want to create what is essentially called a bool object. So it's going to take this cube and it's going to cut this shape, this cube shape out of our wall here. Let's see, where's that bool? I think it's in, it's actually one of these, yes. The bool is okay to use here because we're not really animating this, but if it were being animated, I would maybe try a different way to create like a window inside of this. And so essentially I'm going to take the bool and the floor and make them children of this actual bool right here, right? So I'm going to rename this window bool. And like I said, so the object is still there, but it's just subtracting that object's geometry out of the window that we, or the wall that we have here. It's important that you're using this this order when you're doing this, I believe, because I don't think, like if I put this here, it's going to do the opposite of what we want. So order matter counts here. And so again, in order to create that, you just click, you're going to click this and drag and drop it into this one, right? And when we want to drag and drop it in, we hold it over and make sure that the arrow is pointing down, and it will become a child of that. And what's cool about this now is that I can take this cube and I can adjust it however I want to make it look maybe a little bit more centered in there, right? And now if I want to duplicate this, And let's see, if I select this cube and I hit Control C, Control V, and I rename this to window pane. And then this first cube I renamed to window bool. And this window pane, I'm actually going to go back into this view right over here to my front view. And I'm going to make this actually skinnier and just slightly taller than what the original was, because I'm going to put a glass material on that object. The thing is if you have glass material here, then it's going to appear to be black behind it. But if you're rendering everything with the transparency, anything behind the window will actually be transparent. And so you could essentially bring this into After Effects, put a background behind it that could appear to be like an outside scene, right? That I would blur out a little bit so that it could appear like a little bit fuzzy outside of that. But okay, let's say we have a bunch of stuff in here. We've got the scene kind of set up. Let me go to our asset browser here and let's start looking for some stuff. So glass, particularly for that, for the window. And I don't want to use a model. I do want to use a material. And I want to make sure that I'm using these materials that are not, we do not want to use the Redshift ones. And we want to make sure that it's got this little like free download icon in the corner. And I am probably going to grab like maybe just a frosted glass. Let's see what that looks like here. Let's turn on our studio real quick and move our lights around so that we can light up our area. So I'm going to select the key light here. I'm going to push that back. I'm going to move it a little bit around. I'm going to go actually into my 4 views here so that I can see more around the object. And I'm going to just close this so I can see more of like my area around here and make sure that I'm getting things where I want them to go. So I'm going to bring this one over this way, maybe push it in a little bit or extend this this ring out. If you click and drag this ring of the light, it will allow you to change like either the focal distance or like if you want it to be wider, you can do that. I suggest to, and then if you grab this, it will change the focal distance of the light. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to select the fill light here, and I'm going to, if I move this scene around a little bit, it looks like I have to push it back. So in this view, I'm going to push it back a little bit more. I'm going to zoom out here, zoom out on this one so I can see a little bit more what's going on. And then I'm just going to work within these 4 views to kind of light this area. I'm probably going to push this a little bit more this way. And I'm probably going to change some things about the light. So if I select the light here, the fill light, not our key light, but the light I want to fill in the shadows with. And well, first of all, let's move the camera. So if we're looking in the camera, I'm going to actually remove the protection tag for a moment. And I want to set our camera view up at a nice angle where I am not seeing anything but my room, right? So I might have to extend the shape of my room a little bit in order to make this work. Circle this because you want to have a camera animation where the camera is just like slowly dollying in on the scene, or maybe it's panning around the scene. So maybe I zoom in a little bit like this, move over a little bit like this, you know, I'd move from left to right. But what I notice is that my scene is just too small in general. So I want to leave my camera here. This isn't a bad spot. Let me kind of move it around just a little bit more here. Zoom out a little bit more. And then let me not look through my camera. And I'm going to grab my room walls and the floor, and then I'm going to go into this panel mode, right, to grab some of my things because I'm going to extend them out. I am going to go into my different modes here so that I can see specifically what I'm grabbing at. Particularly this one's going to be helpful right now because I can grab the tops on their own. Oh, come on now. There we goes one. Holding down shift, grabbing the other. And then just moving in this zone and moving this up a little bit to make the walls taller. And I can look through my camera mode still here. Okay, that's good. And then I want to maybe move where my window is. So I'm going to select this window bool that I created and just kind of bring that up a little bit more. Maybe our window's like right there. And you can always make that bigger, right? Because this object is still a primitive, so you can still change the shape of this cube if I wanted to. And then so I'm still looking, I'm not looking through the camera anymore. That's looking through. I want to grab the other edges of my walls, right? So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to hide the cameras or the lights so I don't have to see the lights. And then I'm going to select just the wall. Okay, come on. Oh, I need to grab the wall object itself. And I want to select this one and the floor edge. Now, here's something important to remember because of how we built this, that, let me move down here. Let me actually make this one bigger and zoom out a little bit more. That when we made this and used the extrude, that there was like a little corner area that was made there. So you have to make sure you want to grab that one as well. And grab all of those edges, and we are going to move out of this view. And we're just going to grab this. Oh, wrong way. Did not want to do that. Wrong side. It actually is from top view. Let me make sure. Oof, because I don't want to grab that. Okay. I'm actually going to grab it in this view. So I want to grab this one, and only this edge right here, holding down shift. Let's just make sure I didn't grab anything else. There we go. I'm going to zoom out real quick. And then just extend this wall over a little bit more, and then do the same over here, right? So grab this one, holding down shift, grabbing these ones, and then moving them over a little bit more there. So now when I look through my camera, I shouldn't see the edges of my room, right? Cool. Let's take this window bool and just shuffle this over some more. Oh, one thing I'm noticing is that the actual window pane isn't moving with the bool anymore, so we kind of have to make this a child of that bool, and we have to move it up real quick. So a child and parent relationship, let's talk about that a little bit. That's something that's going to be more complex that we're going to talk about later. But essentially, whatever a parent does, it's like layering orders, and it's essentially linking layers together, right? So when it's underneath like this, and there's this little line that goes like this, it is a child to the layer above it, right? So you're linking this layer below to the layer above. And this would be considered the parent layer. And so when you do that, now if I do anything with the bool, it's going to move the actual window material as well. So just important thing to know there if you guys want to start adjusting this. Maria, is it possible we can talk after class? Yeah, we can just talk over Discord. Just shoot me a message after class and we can discuss that. I'm gonna head up for the night. We'll talk to you later, Efren. Okay, so we've got this room built with this glass here. If I hit Control R, we can see that we have light. This area here actually has glass, but it there's just nothing behind in our world right there, so it's not a big deal. But the lighting in the room, it looks all right. We're going to add some stuff in here to make it look better. So if I were to go over here to my asset browser again, Let's not look in the camera. Let's close our studio up. Let's show the lights and stuff. Oh, we want to do this. We're just going to shut the studio off like this. And frill that up. And then we're going to frill this one up. Yeah, not a problem. After class is fine. Okay, so I'm going to save this real quick, and then let's look up some things. So, well, that was a good one, glass, right? So maybe bottle. Let's see here. We don't want to look up scenes, images. We want to look up models that we can use. Maybe, oh, cool, like this medicine bottle thing. You can drag that in. What's cool is that these assets, if you grab the placement tool or the place tool, let's select this, go back here. If I hit Shift C and I look for, type in place tool, and I select that, double clicking, and then I can grab this object and snap it to whatever I would need to. Right now it's way too small, so I need to make it bigger by grabbing this little square right here and extruding and pulling that up and down allows you to make it bigger. You can move this object, it snaps to the areas. So I would want to put out my table. Maybe I drop the size down. I'm going to look for another one. Maybe I have like a water bottle on there that I'm going to drag in here and drop. As long as you're still in that placement tool, you can just click and grab and do that. And then move this around. If the edges go red, they're overlapping on something, so you'll just want to make sure that this is smaller or that they're not touching. Let me see here. So maybe if this is like a little desk or something, make it smaller. You can rotate it if you grab this little edge and rotate things. I know we talked a little bit about this in class on Thursday's class, but just in case. It looks like I didn't actually grab the entire object here, so let's do this. Let's go back. When you're grabbing an object, it might be worth just grabbing the object here in the object panel, and then clicking and dragging it around, because what happened is as I started to just click and drag like that, and the label stayed behind. So let me see here. Maybe there's a laptop laptop model, laptop right here that we can use. That's not a Redshift one. Let's do this. It places the bounding box right there. I'm going to make it bigger. You know, size relation is everything in this, specifically in this one with the realistic project and the realistic and realism room. You want these to look like real objects. So you don't want to have like the water bottle this big. I mean, I know some of you probably do have those big old water bottles, but like, realistically, it's not going to be that big. So I'd probably scale this down a little bit, maybe even scale my laptop up. But again, grab the entire laptop over here in the object panel, because when I just grabbed that, it just grabbed like it just grabbed the backspace key. So, because each one of these are separate models in and of themselves, so you can actually tear these apart a little bit and look at them. But I can do that. Let's see. There need maybe be a chair in here. Desk chair, office chair. This one's cool. Right, drag this in here. It automatically shows like this bounding box here. So while it's building the object, and then I just have to click and drag that. Make sure it's snapped already on the floor. I'd want to turn this. Maybe it's like facing this way. Maybe it's even facing this way more. Like you just got out of your desk. Move it here. Because these objects aren't really going to animate by themselves, right? The only thing that's going to animate in the scene is the actual camera, right? And we want to make sure that that camera has linear camera angles or movements and not eased movements. So that's like the biggest thing to think about when you're putting this stuff together. Let's say this office it's a bedroom maybe as well. It's like doubling. So I'm going to grab the bed. I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to hold down shift and I think lock it to specific coordinates, and then I'm going to move that there. Let's kind of move around. I'm going to probably just drag this over just a little bit. Maybe actually this will stay here. This kind of stuff. I can make myself like a little folder up here by clicking this null object, which is essentially just an empty layer, right? And I can name this part desk and chair. And then I can put everything that maybe is in that area into this little folder, right? So I can grab that, put that there, shift hold the medication bottle, the plastic water bottle, also control and grab the table and just drag these into this same to the same folder here, and I can furl that up, and that way my bed is separate, and then I can just grab this entire area which I want to move at once, and I can just kind of move it like this, right? So that they're not right on top of each other. Maybe there's some room underneath here. Let's add maybe some materials to like the floor and the walls here, because it's pretty important as well as the materials when it comes to this. Let me first of all grab the studio and leave the studio up top of our thing. I'm going to grab the window bool, and I'm going to grab this and just kind of hitting 9 on my keyboard, move it this way. Maybe my window is right over the bed or center in the room. There we go. And then just want to do that. Let me see if there's like, here's a bedside table that looks cool. Let's throw this in here. So I could put another null here that says bed and side table, right? So I can drop these into here, the bed into here as well, and kind of just keep this nice and cleaned up, right? So I'm going to grab my place tool again, just hitting Shift C. It used to be off to the side here, but I no longer think it is, so I'm just going to grab it like that, and then just making sure that I actually select the bedside table, and let's kind of bring this up a little bit. Holding down Shift, I'm going to rotate that to -90 degrees. Come on. There we go. And then just move that next to the bed here. And then maybe we need a lamp on here real quick. Let's do that. Desktop lamp, table lamp, perfect. Put the table lamp right on there. And I'm going to drop this into, once it's done loading. These lamps might take a minute because usually they have like a light inside of it. So oh, yeah. See, all of a sudden it changed the lighting in the room because there's an actual light in the lamp. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to drag it down into my little folder here. And then I'm going to increase the size of my lamp. And maybe move it back right here. There we go. Let's turn on our studio and see if we can. It's going to take a second to load that up. All right. Let me hit Control R because to do render preview. Okay, there we go. So we have the lights happening from our camera still. You might want to worry about turning the light on and off on this lamp. So the lamps are different, right? Because we obviously have light coming in from an outside source. It's like not there, really there. It's not an actual light in the room. It's not an ambient light. It's like a studio light that we have set up here. And so if I zoom out of here in this second view and I grab that fill light right here, and make sure that I press 9 and get out of that place tool. And then I'm going to just move this over and back up a little bit so that I can kind of light this side of the scene, because I don't think that that's getting enough of a light. And then if I move here, I might have to rotate that pointing up a little bit more. So let's first of all push it back a little bit so that we fill in these corners here, right? These little areas up at the top corners of like where your ceiling and your wall meet. That's called ambient occlusion, right? When you see all the light and it bounces off things, no matter what, the corners of your walls or where edges meet in your environment create like these soft shadows, which is essentially ambient occlusion. That's what that is. And so we just want to make sure nothing's like pure black in those corners. And so that's why I might want to even add another light if I could in here. So maybe we add a Shift C. Let's see if I can do like an area light. Grab the standard area light and not the redshift one. So make sure that is not there. Grab this one right here. I'm going to go Shift C again and just kind of grab and drag that into, or double click it. And so we get this option for this light. I'm going to zoom out here. It's just, my computer's just taking a minute to figure everything out. Let's just give it a second. Woo, that's bright. So we're going to lower that down a little bit. First of all, the first thing I want to do is drag this upwards. I'm going to maybe rotate it. Not like that. Let me select the actual light itself and rotate it like this, negative 90 degrees. I don't think it matters. Let me throw in an interactive render region so I can see. Cool, you can see that there's like some kind of glass there. So let me put this 90 degrees and see if that changes. I don't think the degree changes. This light is just there to fill in spaces. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop the brightness of this light down because I just kind of want it to fill in a little bit of those dark areas of the room. Let me go over here and drop the intensity down, maybe to like 50 degrees, or I'm sorry, 50%. That's not bad. That's pretty good. And let's warm in these, most of the lighting in people's houses isn't necessarily daylight lighting, right? You get the daylight lighting. There's mixed lighting in your house all the time, because you get the daylight from outside and then you get internal lighting within the house. And usually your internal lighting within the house is going to be warmer lighting. And so the Kelvin temperature is going to be different. So I like to use, when it comes to like a realistic scene, I like to use the temperature here on lights. And then I like to just bring that down to like maybe a little bit of a warmer one. It doesn't have to be a very strong, warm color, right? It's just a slight push in that warmth direction to just kind of give like a comforting feeling into a room. And so that's, something that I like to do when, especially thinking about these realism scenes. In fact, I might even do that with the light over here as well. Let's see. Maybe I'm going to drop the intensity down here a little bit, maybe only 20% on this one. And this is my key light. So this actually, let's leave the key light at 100% and just change the temperature a little bit. Drop that down slightly. And then, but the fill light, I'm going to drop, that's intensity is already down here, so we don't have to worry about that. But then if I hit that Control R, let's see here. I got to shut off the interactive render region and then hit Control R. Nice, and it gives like a really nice lighting to the area in the room. Oh, nice. Belle, what's up in the chat? You can make an easy ambient light when working with a standard and viewport to make a point light, check on ambient illumination, and then turn it down until the shadows are filled in as desired. Oh, cool. So standard and viewport is to make a point light. Okay. So you can also do Are you saying like a, oh, cool. This is standard already, by the way. So if you guys want to grab a standard light, you guys, as long as it says ST next to it, it means standard. Okay. So just, if you guys need to go over here and just grab these things, you can. And the standard point light is going to be this one right here that you can also add in and do what Belle just said, like that. So either way, let's see here. Belle, do you know if the point light works better when rendering? Is it going to work more efficiently than the area light? Because I'm curious about that. I'm going to delete the one that I created up there. You can select this also, and you can change the type right here. So if you need to, you can change this to a spotlight, an infinite light, an omni light, but they will have differences when it comes to render times. I'm just going to let you guys know. It's just called light. All right, so let's go ahead and add some material to the floor and the materials to the wall. And then we'll move on to looking at some of your guys' typography projects. So I'm going to close down my studio here. I'm going to drag this light and put it into my studio because it's part of it. And then I'm going to bring the bedside and table. The first thing I want you guys to know, though, is when doing this should be much more filled out, right? Like mine's not nearly as full as what a real bedroom would be. You'd probably have photos on the wall and stuff like that. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. The more in the room, that more it looks lived in, the more realistic it's going to be. Oh, okay. So it makes it so you need less light and it fills in a base amount of light. Okay, cool. So let's look for a wall material. Let's first of all grab the window and room. Let's just rename this to room. And we're going to grab the walls. And I'm actually going to make sure that you're over here in your plane mode, your polygon mode. And I'm going to select by holding down shift both these walls. And let's look for maybe some kind of, I think plaster. There is a plaster material. Let's look up a couple other ones. Paint, car paint. I want to only find standard materials and not this redshift stuff. So these ones will work, but these are obviously too shiny. Like, I think there's wallpapers in here that you can choose from too. I think I will use this wallpaper, and I'm just going to drop this onto both of my walls here. It looks like I accidentally had my floor selected as well, so I am going to grab the floor. Oh, not do that. I'm going to grab my selection tool there, and I have to actually come over here to grab, I think let me see, model mode, polygon mode. Let's grab this polygon here and drop like some wood flooring. I'm going to type in floor. Floor tiles aren't bad. Let's bring that in. See if it just drops on the floor. Okay, so we're having some issues with the materials wanting to go on the appropriate place. So I am just going to, we've already got these materials added into our project, right? So, because they're actually over here in the material manager. And these are all the other materials that came with the objects that I brought in, right? So just being able to kind of look at these and being able to point them out, which ones you need to use and which ones you don't. So I need to make sure that I grab the actual walls on the object itself. I need to make sure that I'm selected on this object. Let's grab that. holding down shift, grabbing this one. And now let's try and drop this wallpaper material onto those ones. There we go. And then, because before what happened is I had grabbed onto the actual bool that we created, and when I need to grab onto the actual room that we created. So you need to make sure you're grabbed on the correct object. You'll select that floor with this polygon mode, and then I'm going to drag in the floor tiles, just drag and drop them right on here. Now, automatically we can see that these are way too big. Like, you're not going to only have like 6 tiles in your room. That's just ridiculous. And so we need to change down the tiling of the actual tiles here. And you do this by changing your tile amount over here in your, you change the tile U in tiles U and V, and it will change the amount that is actually in your render here. So I'm probably going to crank this up to like 15, not 150, maybe 15 by 15. And then we've got like a much more appropriate. In fact, let me just do 10 by 10, making sure they're equal so they're all like squares. Oh, cool. Belle also said that if you are in here and you type in standard next to it, I didn't know that. That is awesome. Oh, you're the best. This is still probably, there we go. It'll put your standard materials on there for you. So let's see. Wood floor standard. Because the wood is cool too. Parquet is what you usually see on wood floors as well. Let's use that instead of tiles. Tiles are outdated. Okay, one thing that you guys see here, right? And here's our object. Here's our room and walls and floor. This little object right here is showing that we have different materials on our object. It's one object, right? But it's got different materials on it. And so these little triangles are telling the layers in the computer which panels or which polygons that those materials are on, right? So we want to make sure that we delete the floor one right here, which I believe is this one. And then I'm just going to select that again. And let's throw some parquet onto that wood floor there. It's going to take a second to load. I did it again. I need to make sure I select this and then drag this in. Did it again. Okay. Selecting off, then selecting this, and then selecting this. Then dragging this in. I probably shouldn't have done it. Let's go back. There we go. Okay. What I should have done is not deleted this little triangle. Don't delete that. Instead, just let's bring this into our material manager, and I'm just going to drag and replace this one material there, and it will do that for me. And so now if I look through my camera, if I go back to my studio and look through my camera here, and then I hit Control R to do a quick render, you know, obviously we would need to zoom in a little bit more because of that. The flooring is a little bit hard to see, and that's likely because of the lighting that's in the room. So maybe if I double click on this material, we can bring the interactive render region up first of all, so we can see the floor here. If I want to move this interactive render region around, I just have to grab the glitteriness. I forget about that. The wallpaper sometimes has like this weird glittery thing that happens. And I think that has to do with the reflections and then also the it's something to do with the renderer maybe. Let's just change the reflectance on this. Reflection strength. Let's drop that down a little bit. Maybe just put an 80. If I don't want to see all of this area either, if I only want to see a small section of it, you can change the size of the interactive render region by just grabbing one of these little squares in the corner and doing this. So you only have a small amount that you actually have to render. And this little slider here allows you to see it in a higher definition or to drop down the definition and have like a lower definition, right? So that's something that you can kind of mess around with here to just get an idea of what this is going to look like when it's rendered out. So we dropped down the reflection on this and that helped a little bit. Might have to do with the lighting in here as well. Probably wouldn't change that. Ooh, maybe it's sometimes worth just possibly getting a different material as well. So maybe this parquet doesn't work as good as like this one here might work. Let's move that one in here and replace it on the floor there, which automatically looks a lot better here. So unless you want to play around and do that, and then the only thing I would say about the floor here is the tiling is too high on it. So I'm going to select that. You have to grab, when you want to change the tiling, you have to grab the little tag, the material tag here on the layer of the object. You have to select that, and then you can just drop these down. So I'm going to do 5 and 5. Probably even a little bit bigger for this one. Probably 3 and 3. I think that looks appropriate for the size of our room. And then with the wallpaper, first of all, this floor, I'm going to get rid of those. The wallpaper, why are you so glittery? Do you have to have a reflectance? Yes. Maybe dropping the reflection strength down. All right, Logan, sounds good. You have a good night. Cool. But yeah, like playing around with this can be fun. You can also do the, if you don't want to do that, I think a plaster would look cool, especially if you're wanting to, let's drag the plaster into here. Change the color might be a little bit easier to do with this than the wallpaper. Let's drag that in. Okay, the plaster is not bad. I think that it's slightly large for the area as well, so I would increase the tiling of this. Probably 5, 5. Bring this up a little bit. Scale this down so it's a small region because I only need to see a small section of it. Make that smaller. This is a lot of what working on this stuff is like. Let's increase this a lot more to see what the changes actually looks like. I think it's actually going to have to be in the, so let's change the tiling back to 1. And then I think it's actually in the material itself. Because it's a standard material, I don't think that maybe it is just as this. You can change the color. Like obviously the color here is great. You can drop the grain down if you want to, like the plaster grain. So if I wanted to change this to like more of a maybe like a deep green color. Let's get into this. Drop this down, maybe grab it like this. You know how people are doing like really cool dark colors and stuff for their houses now. Maybe even drop the saturation a little bit there so it's kind of like a foresty color. Drop the noise. When you make darker colors though, you're gonna maybe have to add more light in there. So maybe the grain on here I changed to 15, so it's not so intense. So this is kind of neat. So you can come in, if you double click on this plaster material, you can edit the material like that, right? So that's really cool. And then as far as like the camera movement goes, to record the camera motion, I would, first of all, let's shut off this render region here. And I'd probably start my camera actually off to the side, maybe pull it out a little bit, maybe bring it a little bit more to like this eye level. Obviously, I would have to extend my floor and my ceiling maybe a little bit more. But I would just pretty much go like this and go into my 4 view here. And I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to go to coordinates and we're going to keyframe all of the coordinates. I'm going to hit this over here so we can see all of our frames. The other thing you want to do, right, is change, if you hit Control D to go into the project settings, right, we want to make sure that it's at 24 frames a second. That we're at, let's see, 24 times 5, 120 frames. And then under animation here that we do linear keyframes for this specifically. You know, so changing that project stuff before you start animating is pretty important. And then we're going to start maybe over here and then go all the way to the end of our timeline. And we are going to move the camera. So I'm probably going to move the camera more in this top view. Let's kind of grab this and move it maybe over to the side, maybe pull it out a little bit. So it's right there, right? One just kind of smooth panning movement from one side of the room to the other. And so don't forget to keyframe those. So I'd go back to, I'd have to select my camera and then I would just select this little keyframe button here and it'll keyframe all those parameters for me. And now if I go back to the beginning of the animation, hit H on here to see all this. And then it's a nice, just smooth motion from one side to the other. In fact, though, this has linear keyframes, and I can tell by when I watch the camera actually do the animated movement, it is it's speeding up, it's gaining speed, and then it's slowing down. And so you want to make sure that you've got all of these selected, right? Because I had put the keyframes down before I changed my default to linear. Let's extend this to the 120th frame there. And then I want to just select this option right there to turn this into linear keyframes. And then I'm going to go back and then we're going to play that again. Nice. In fact, I would probably do a lot less motion here, right? So a nice slower movement. So I'd probably go back into here, move my playhead all the way to the end. Actually move this in because it was at 120 frames. And then I would possibly move this back here. Oh, making sure that I'm not selected on all my keyframes. And then just kind of move it back here. That it's like maybe less than half or a little bit close to half the distance, and then just re-keyframe right there. And so let's see this. If I play this, oh, we're watching the wrong one. There we go. Nice. And this gets a nice panning, you know, shot of the entire room. So it's almost like that your camera is on a track and that track is moving across the room, right? Tip for making an orbit camera, make a null in the center of your camera. Yeah. I guess you could do an orbit camera if you want to, but usually these shots are nice and they're slow and they're very one side to the other, not much rotation to it. you know, so you could use a target camera if you want to, but usually this nice, steady moving camera shot across that pans from one side of the room to the other is a good choice when doing like a view like this. And then just making sure that when you go to render this out, you guys, that you're rendering, you go to the viewport render, you go under here and your geometry only. And then you want to make sure you've got transparency, shadows, and reflections marked on here. And then when you output it, right, you're going to make sure that this is all frames, that we're at the 24 frame rate right there. And when we go to save, we want to make sure that we're saving as a PNG with that alpha channel, okay? Because we have glass right here, so we have the opportunity to have something behind it that we can add there when we bring this into After Effects or whatever, you know, we're going to bring this into post, right, to do the post production on. And so that's just kind of like a quick way. Obviously, I would add materials to the table that I created and yada, yada, yada. But this is just kind of a lesson for you guys, a different way to see me create the scene, because I know that we have like previous classes where we use a different way to kind of create the room and stuff like that. But this is another technique you can use to create the room, which I think is a little bit more versatile because it's going to introduce you a little bit into modeling and like hard surface modeling specifically. So you guys can choose to do whatever one. If you've already turned it in, that's okay. You don't have to change it and turn it in again. I'm not going to be like a stickler on this if you want to use this technique or another technique. Oh, real quick. Also noticing right here, I'm just going to point this out, but there should be a material on the side of the window frame, like the sides of the window thing right here. If it wants to be a different colored material, that's okay, but there just needs to be something there. Like those are things that I'm going to notice when I'm looking at your guys' renders. So just having like that attention to detail and really looking things over a couple times before you render it is a smart choice when it comes to this. But this is usually a pretty fun project for most students, especially if you have, you know, you have the opportunity to use their asset browser. Why not do that? If you guys have a computer that is strong enough to use redshift materials and redshift lighting and a redshift camera and stuff like that, you can absolutely do that. It's going to take a lot more time to render, but it's going to look a little bit more realistic. And you just have to make sure that under your render settings, you change it to redshift render, right? But a majority, I'm going to say probably all of you are going to want to use, are going to likely use the standard or the viewport renderer with standard materials and stuff, because it's just going to cut down the time tremendously. And you can always work on doing that. You can always give me this version with all the standard stuff in it, and then maybe later before our revision, when I've given you all of your changes to make, you can make those changes with a redshift render and spend a little bit more time and get a higher quality render out of it if you want to. So just a couple options there for you guys. But hi Skylar, what's up? Let me go to, we're gonna review now whoever's turned in their typography projects. I'm happy I started with this though, so you guys get a little bit of, you guys can see the other side of the project and not just the surreal side. Okay. Excuse me. Typography. I've already added yours into here. A couple students did submit working files to me. Specifically, I can't check the After Effects file. I'm probably going to be able to check the Cinema 4D file. So we'll look at that as well. I think that was I think David, you were the one that had the issue with that. I read it in your note to me on your submission. Okay, where was I going? To downloads. That's where I was going. Yeah, Evan, you will want to um Evan, you'll want to render this out and send me a rendered. You want to resubmit with a rendered one. And then David, we're going to look at this to see like what the issue is. So, let's start here. Oh, wrong. All right. So we have Ian. I'm going to just play this. That's cool. I like the different ways you had this come in. What's up, Evan? Yeah, just Evan, turn in the cuz what happens? Oh my gosh. That's awesome. I don't know if that's your cool. Okay. Um before I go through this, Evan, yeah. So what happens is if I go to open this file, it's not going to have any of your assets with it. Um if there is anything with it. So if I go to open this, it might not show everything. Um I don't have that font on here, so I'd have to. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so it's got that, but like what I need is for you to it's only this one composition. So I want you to render it all. You have until the 26th to turn it in. So if you want to if you want to get the project done if you're not quite done with it yet and then you want to resubmit it, you can do that as well. And then submit it to me rendered as one single MP4 and then I can grade it that way cuz I can't grade that like the project files. Typography. Let me go back here. Ian, awesome. Good job on that. First of all, good start. There's a few things that I thought really cool idea actually with the fade, the words, the way you had the letters coming in to the screen was definitely something I wasn't expecting to see, but I liked it, especially because of the way in the positioning of the letters in the beginning when they were moving in there. We might have to change something about that, but in general, it looks good. The problem that I see initially right off the bat is the color choice here. You have to be careful when it comes to complementary colors and their saturation levels, right? Because what happens when you put two complementary colors next to each other, this is like a great design thing for you guys to understand. When you put two complementary colors next to each other, it tends to create a visual vibration, which means that your eyes are struggling to look at one color or the other. And that's particularly why they have, those vision tests where you have to look at the dots and say what number it is. And they're usually use complementary colors so that your eye has a hard time differentiating. Um, so they can actually tell the accuracy of your vision with those, right? Or if you're colorblind or not. Um, and so when it comes to using the green and red next to each other, that's okay. I'm not saying it's terrible. I mean, they complement each other, but you need to choose a lower saturation of probably the green here in this case. So, what do I mean by saturation? When you have an object or a shape, let me create a shape here. And I go into my color. Let's go into my color settings here. Right. And this is the setup that you see when you when you bring up your color wheel option, right, inside of After Effects. And right now we're on hue. HSB stands for hue, saturation, brightness. RGB is red, green, blue. You can click on these, right, to change these however you're more comfortable with. Default is usually the hue, saturation, brightness, really starting with the hue, right? And so you change saturation from going left to right or up and down on in the area, right? So your hue is the same here. The hue is this green color. This is full saturation. up in the upper right hand corner, that's fully saturated color, right? This is a fully desaturated version of that green. And then this is a fully black version of those, right? So you can go in here and you can change this bar here changes your hues, right? So when you're picking colors for like a color palette, it's always good. Let's say you have that red color. Let's pick a red color that you had. Kind of a fairly saturated red is what you had there. And then we're going to want to make another square on top. But this one, actually, let me select off. And you've got this other square here. And your green color was closer to like a yellowish green. And it was kind of like around there. Which is okay. But when they're next to each other, it causes that vibration. So you're going to need to take this and drop the saturation down, right? So you maybe bring it down to like more of a grayish color, or more of like the white, or if you want to go darker, maybe you go like a really dark, more saturated green, because the higher it is on this side, the further it is to the right, it's more saturated. The further it is to the left, it's desaturated, right? And so this is just adding in whites and blacks to get different shades of this hue. So what I would do is I would either drop it down and get a really dark green, and even then you might have some difficulty, so you might want to shift the hue a little bit. Maybe what I would do is come in here to the red and I would drop the saturation of this and give it like maybe like a little bit more of like this kind of this is more on the pink side of the hue. I'd probably drop it down here to the orange side and get more of like this cranberry color. Maybe even drop it down and get a lighter pink. Right. And this is going to be more easy. This is going to be easier to read. But just kind of messing around with that. And what I meant by shifting hues is you can come over here and you can shift that hue a little bit into one color or the next. So like when you're creating a color palette and there's similar colors to it, in like a monochromatic one specifically, it looks a little bit more complex if you just shift that hue a little bit, right? Just a tiny bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, but here's like with that full red. But if I shift that hue a little bit into that orange, we get like a little bit more of an interesting palette here with these colors mixed together. And I'd probably desaturate this a little bit because the saturation was a little too close between these. But that's essentially what you kind of have to do in order to pick your color palettes out, is like just mess around with the colors a little bit, and you'll find something that looks a like stronger, right? So I would definitely update the color palette here. And that's just a quick lesson for all of you guys when it comes to picking color palettes, right? Because we haven't really talked a lot about it. Your name here, it looks pretty good. Let me play the camera motion. The camera movement's kind of fast from one side to the other. You might want to just update the way your curves look under your camera animation. And maybe you extend the timeout a little bit, because right now it's only lasting 4 seconds. If you bring it to 5 seconds, you'll get a little bit of extra time there to create like a little bit more of a smoother camera motion, because we want it to be smooth. This one in particular can have that eased camera motion, because we're kind of starting the camera movement on screen and then it's stopping while still like recording or whatever. So that's okay that you have it eased, but you just don't want an extreme easing to happen. It has to be subtle, right? So it's fairly smooth throughout the rest of it. The other thing I would do is I would turn the intensity of your lights down or pull the lights back a little bit so it looks less spotlight and harsh on here, especially because we're getting some pretty hard looking shadows. And then the corner of your, like the curve of your backdrop is, if this is what you want, that's okay. But if you want to get rid of this like harsh highlight that's happening there, you're going to want to smooth out that curve within the options of the backdrop. So that you can do that. I think that would look a lot better there. And then you can even make your name bigger because the name's fairly small within this. We have a lot of space on either side here. So it's a good start. Just a little bit of editing to a couple things on that one, and you'll be okay. I think this one's one that needs more of the work here because they need to swing in, come to a stop, and then stay on screen for a second and then move off screen, and this like this. So it's going to zoom in, stop, stay, stop for a second, and then zoom off, right? We're looking for that in yours right here. And what happens is you don't actually come to a full rest here, and these take a while to come on screen, right? The you have to update the easing to look a very specific way. And so I would rewatch this section of the video just so you can understand the easing a little bit more of this good, better, best. Because when you look at the curves here, let me make this bigger. Let's select that's the, so this is the easing for the good, word, the word good. This is the easing for the word better. In fact, they could be a little bit different still. Like this one, I could even make a little less dramatic and bring that in a little bit more. And then the best is very like dramatic looking easing here. So I would just re-watch that section so you can emulate similar curves to that. They don't have to be exact, but very similar will help you to get this effect where it zooms in on screen, right? And the biggest thing is having keyframes. These keyframes right here all have to be the same value so that, well, like from this keyframe to this keyframe have to be exact same value. This one to this one have to be the exact same value. And the reason is because we want that object to stop, right? And not move on screen. So if it stays the same value, nothing's changing, nothing's moving, right? So you're going to want to make sure that you have the section in between the actual movement itself. So the movement actually only occurs between these keyframes and these keyframes. Between these middle keyframes, nothing is happening on any of the text. And then the final thing you want to do is you're going to add motion blur onto the text as well. Let's continue here. The fade, this is cool. I'm all for it. You can actually do this. I think this is neat looking. Just when this comes in right here, move this one over a little bit more so that there's equal distance between all of these. These look pretty equal. This one's the obvious one that's a little bit too far away. So let me continue playing that. Cool. These ones have the same exact, they say the same exact thing. So, right, one type can be faded on per, what does it say on mine? Per letter and per word. So these have to be different. One has to be fading on per word, which you already have. The other one has to be fading on per letter. And there's a character. It's called per character. And there's an actual different preset within your effects and presets here that helps you do that. So you're going to want to rewatch that section and do that again as well. And then you want these to fade off all at the same time, because what's happening is this one isn't, and you want them to fade off screen fully before you introduce the next, before you introduce this right here. Now, the name one, this one is different. I think this is really your only one that you have. The biggest thing is here, there needs to be alignment happening. If I turn my rulers on here and I drag this ruler over, there's your website and your name are aligned, but there's no like hierarchy happening. Your email has to be aligned with this as well. You want to have similar spacing at least between these two. And then this one, you need to show hierarchy with text size and like font size and font weight. Remember we talked about that? If you have to refer back to that PDF that you guys have from the, what's his name? Ah, anyways, there's the PDF that's attached to the module that allows you to look through there and see what hierarchy is. So I would definitely watch it again, because this needs all that hierarchy. And then this one's kind of, I guess, you're missing one, right? Because you have this one here, but I'd like to see your personal, this is your personal one more or less, and you have to have one that emulates the similar technique that I've used in class. So um you're just shy one. If you update that and return it in, I'll give you a new grade for that, but it's a good start to this, right? You've done a good start. This, as far as this goes, um that's pretty cool. This is cool. The color palette's fine with this, but it's, let me see here. The crossing of the text is not as big of a deal here because you have all of the letters split up, right? So they're all coming in from different sections. You're going to need to change the spacing on this one and this one right here, right? Detail to that stuff, you know, because you're going to get people who know design and who can just spot these things that are off slightly pretty quickly, right? So that's why I'm just kind of picking these ones apart like this. But yes, just move these over a little bit, make sure these are appropriately spaced. Then let me see here. My mouth feels so dry today. Let's escape this. You could even have, like, if this text is supposed to be part of this one, I would have maybe this not so central. Maybe this image could be off to the corner a little bit more, but you need more information here because that at hazard.avi, I mean, I'm assuming that is like some kind of, I don't know what the .avi is. I don't know if this is like a tag for something. That's okay. That's not a problem. I would just add more information on here so that, like, this information back here, I would put on here. But this is a big change for the eyes right now, going from like kind of a lower saturated or like less vibrant to like this super vibrant thing here. So it's okay if it's like this, but I would maybe make these similar. Yeah. Add more information. I would maybe this guy, maybe he's off to maybe at the bottom below all of your information, making sure your alignment's appropriate and things like that. But it's a very good start on this. Oh, let's see here. This one might have been your, I think this one was your one, like following class, but you're gonna follow class closer to that one. So I would rewatch that section over. And let's check the format of your, yeah, cool. 24 frames a second, 1920, 1080. You're good on that. All right. How's the stream been running though so far, you guys? I think it's been good. I ended up purchasing something like a mesh extender. I tried to go up into the attic this weekend to drop a Cat 6 line down here so I could like go Ethernet to there. But like we had put insulation in our roof a couple years ago, and it is like under all the boards are under like 6 inches of insulation. I can't see anything. I was like, there's no way. So I'm hoping this little pod thing that I bought works. But I think it's been pretty strong this whole time. There we go. All right, next one on here. Only froze once on your end. Oh, nice. Cool. That's good for me to hear. The next one I have in here is Pierre. Pierre. Pierre, are you in the chat? Okay, let's see here. 24 frames a second, looking good. All right, let's play. Cool, good job on that. Nice. That looked great. Ooh, some fancy work there. Oh, yeah. That's so cool. Awesome. Really neat. Great job on this, Pierre. Great first draft on this. So, let's talk about this. First of all, the color palette on this whole thing looks really, really good. Pretty easy to read, even if the text, I would maybe just, I mean, you don't even really have to darken up the background because the white and there's just such a good color contrast. There's enough of a color contrast. Let me slow my talking down here a little bit. The only thing that I might see here is that let me bring this here. That's good. The alignment looks good. The spacing of this looks good. When I bring this to the beginning, I can just barely see those letters. So all you got to do is those first couple keyframes here where the font is, where the type is off screen, these ones right here. All you got to do is just select all those and move them further back, right? And just make sure that your playhead is over top of that when you do make that change, or else it'll change everything else. But because of the easing that you added onto it, it's causing it to show up on screen a little bit. So you mitigate that problem by just shuffling them over to the left a little further. But the easing here looks very, oh, let me close this out. The easing on this looks really good. And same with the motion blur that you have going on here. The hierarchy looks really nice. It's a very solid start on this. The fade text looks really, really good as well. You've got the appropriate effects on there. The only thing I would say is to, you can either take this text right here, and I would make it smaller. And then I would also maybe change the line spacing on there, which is also known as the, not the kerning, but the, leading. Words. Leading here. So when you decrease that leading, I would maybe, so a good rule is to take your font weight here that you have and then just tack on 25. And then usually that's a good letting space between the text from one line to the other. And then I would just maybe tighten up the kerning, so the space in between these words a little bit here might be a little helpful, but I would just do that and then make sure that they're aligned with the top and the bottom of the actual word fade here. And so you could also do this, right? If you're having trouble, you can update the leading here, but keep the font size the same. And then you can take all of these, right? And you can attach them to a null object and scale them up. So what do I mean by that? Because if you do this, if you try and move these, up a little bit and make them bigger and scale them, it could cause an issue with your animation because we have keyframes on here, right? And everything's already uh, on screen and ready to go. So what you can do is you can create like a control, like a master control, by selecting all of your objects that need to be updated. And you're going to right click and you're going to go to new null object. And like in Cinema 4D, that null object is a blank object that you essentially connect other layers to, and then it becomes like a controller for this object. So when I selected these and created that one, it didn't link these layers to that controller yet. So I'm going to select all of them by holding down shift and grabbing each one. And then there's this tiny little like spirally object right here. It's called a pick whip. That's PICKWHIP. And what that does is if I click and I just drag and let go over this, it connects these layers to this object here that I created, this controller. So when I do this and I'm like, oh, they still need to be bigger, I can just hit scale on the controller, scale that up a little bit, maybe move this up a little bit, holding shift so that it makes it a little bigger. I can adjust that without affecting any of the animation that I already made, right? Because that's a big thing here, is that you don't want that animation that you already created to be affected by that. The problem is that now, like, obviously the F is too far over, so you might have to make some adjustments to your keyframes on here. But this is a great way to override all of that, make a change, keep that change set in stone. I can delete that controller object if I want to. And now these have made that change and I can adjust anything I need to. So just kind of making sure that these are all aligned is the only thing you have to do on this scene. And then updating the text like right there. Your name right here looks really cool, and you've got some really fun camera movements going on. So we start, first of all, there's a fade happening. You did a nice transitional fade to your name here in similar colors, right? I would maybe take your backdrop object and just slightly make that curve a little bit more smooth so that it doesn't give you this harsh line right here. But this looks really good. And yeah, just fancy camera movements here because it's going to pull out and it's got this continuous motion to where it pushes into here. I would say, let's play this, see how long it is. Nice. I would even, before you start to fade off of this, I would only fade off right about here when it's really close and pushed in on that. But that's some really fun camera work that you have going on there. This looks really good. Everything is, as far as like the animation goes, let's see, nothing crosses each other, which is really good. The one thing that I would do here is make this text bigger, right? Because this, thinking about the hierarchy, you're going to want to change. I can see that the font weight is different, but this needs to be larger as far as font size. So I would make that change on here, but that's really the only other thing. I can't remember. Let me see if there's and then add some blurring to these as well. I think that would be beneficial. Cool. They all fall down and animate off screen. Now this is great. This looks really cool. This is very personal. I love that it shows your style, your illustration style, and nothing's like overly animated on here. So we're able to enjoy the imagery that you gave us, but then really be able to read on this, and that's pretty cool. You could, if you wanted to animate this further, depending on if these characters are on their own little layers, right? If they're on their own layers, you could maybe have them like hovering around a little bit, especially these little hearts. But that's optional for you. I think that you did a really good job on your personal one. I think that it's very creative, very cool. And it looks really nice. As far as this goes, though, I would just make sure everything's aligned, right? Because I know, I see you're kind of trying to follow that there. It would, it's only because there's not enough text here that this doesn't, might not appear that way right away to someone. If there was like a bigger text box here and more text to fill in to give more of that idea of what shape it's following around, that would be okay. But because there's not really that much information in there, I would just align everything right here and then make sure that you're just increasing the, again, font weight and font size of your name here so that we get this pronounced thing that we're looking at right away. As far as like centering this, you could center this if you want to, and take this little guy and move him like underneath or up top. Either way, it's very cute and it's a really really good start on this. So, very pleased with it. Good job on this overall. Minimal changes here. Yeah, really good job. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me a second. All right. Let's go to the next one here. 810. We probably got a couple more to go over here, and then possibly moving. We'll do the rest of these on either Thursday's class or we'll do them on the following Tuesday's class. We'll see where we're at. But I also have to talk about the next assignment too. So this is interesting. First of all, Jesse, so the biggest thing here is that it's all in one composition like that, and then what you need to do is have them layered like this in a composition so that we see them. I almost like getting around. That's kind of funny because it kind of gets around what it is because it all is in one MP4, but let me just open this composition right there. It has to be like this, right? So we focus on one, then see the other. Obviously, this needs to zoom out. We'll see one, see the other, then see the other, then the other two, right? Because there should be 5 ones in here. Which, I mean, you have the 5, but, and I'll look at them and grade it, but you need to put them in their own separate, thing in composition, and then essentially sew those compositions together just like this. So if you're wondering about this, I would re-watch the like last part of the typography lesson that I did with this one, and you'll see how to kind of line these ones up so that they're all together. Now, if I go like this, so I can zoom into each one and we can kind of look at them and get an idea of what's going on. Let's look at we'll start here with your name. So the biggest thing here that is an issue is that the text cross over each other like this. When you don't want the text to cross over each other, even if so your name could come from the top down would be okay, and then this is kind of okay. What's happening? The cat spanker. Interesting. And Jesse Jar, like your email and your handle, like your Instagram handle, can come in the same way that they are, but I would just make sure your name comes from the top to the bottom. And then you want them to actually stop at some point and not continue moving here, because that's what happens, and we want to have like it on screen and stopped in order to read that. So I would just watch this section over again, and you'll be able to get that pretty quick because you're most of the way there. We just want to fine tune that right and then make sure that it stops there. As far as the good, better, best, let's watch that. All right, so it's a good start here. Let's move this over. You just need to tap over the word good just slightly, a little bit more. Let's continue to play to watch them animate off screen. I would work on the curves a little bit, and just all you have to do is go back and look at the curves that I created. Even if you go back on this live stream and I showed a comparison of each one of them. So I would just re-look at the curves and try and match your curves up more similar to that. And then you'll have like different types of easing where it's because right now it just looks like these aren't really eased differently. It more looks like the layers are offset like this down here, and we're focusing on easings in particular. The other thing that you could add to sell the speed is the motion blur. So you're going to want to add that in there. And then make sure that they're the animation off screen. So you kind of have it blocked out. It just needs to be fine tuned a little bit. As far as the typography and fade project goes, let's close this out. Let's watch this. Nice. This actually looks really good. I mean, you could maybe scoot these apart, but these are all equally away from each other. The A and the D right here are slightly, it's not that big of a deal. The fade scene is actually pretty good. And you have the appropriate ones per letter, per word. The fade scene, yeah, I don't think that other than making it its own big thing, there's not much here. The easing on these, that's maybe the one thing that you need to look at is the easing on the word fade itself. The big letters, I would look at the easing on those and maybe adjust it a little bit more, and you should be good to go. But the very minimal changes on this fade scene, you did a good job on that. And then let's go to your name right here. This is cool. I think you use like I don't know. No, it's not a see-through material, but nice. I think you did a really good job on your Cinema 4D one. The only thing that I would do, Jesse, here is I would maybe lighten the intensity of the light, or drop the intensity percentage of the light, and that way it's not giving us such harsh shadows and stuff. And then you're also going to want to add a light so that it fills in all these areas, right? So we talked about how having your main key light would be this big spotlight that you have right here, pointing at it, mainly lighting like the face of the object. And then you have fill lights, which are lights that are off to the side, maybe, or back and off to like some kind of corner that is maybe it's going to be a less intense light, and it's going to basically be there just to fill in the shadows from different angles. So you could probably add two of them in there, one from each corner, and kind of pointing down at your name. And I think that would fill this area in as well. So we don't have such harsh shadowing happening. We can see all the way to the end. It'll give us good, nice shadows here as well. And then it'll soften these shadows up, which is kind of what's needed here. But this looks really good. It's a good start, especially with the animation on here. So minimal stuff on that one. And then over here, let's watch this. Your like personalized one. Let's go all the way to the beginning. I actually Okay, first of all, let's talk the approved fonts because the approved fonts are important when it comes to class, right? Like having the um specific fonts for the other typography things. But this is kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. Like it's an old English looking font and it reminds me this mixing these together, which I think it's probably the same font. The letters, just the capital versions of them, or they're two separate fonts here, but they do look good together. Um, and so you did make a good choice on mixing the fonts. The one thing I would do is you need to align all these. So you need to push this off. Even with it being skewed, it looks pretty cool. Like they're at the same angle. There's a similar distance between these two. You can make your name a little bit bigger. And then I would just push this one over so that everything's aligned on the left side. And then the way that it comes in is pretty cool, right? But it needs to stop at some point. And then you could have like maybe other objects around here. This just it just reminds me of like a tattoo card. Like I feel like I would see this on some tattoo artist's business card that they're handing out for people as far as like the font. And so maybe you could have like an illustration in here similar to what Pierre did, which was really cool on theirs. So I would, definitely add a little bit more to this. But I think that you're at a good starting off point, right? I think that this could just be built upon. And the biggest thing is with the animation, like making sure that it comes in, that it stops on screen, and then that it stays stopped for a while instead of like continuing to move and then it can shoot off screen, which is fine. And then I would add that motion blur to it. And once you do that, I think that you'll have like a really cool looking thing. Normally, I'm not into the diagonal um, text on here, right? Like you're breaking several rules here, but the rules, the way you broke the rules, it looks like it looks cool. Like I'm not gonna lie about that. So that's okay, especially because you did follow the original one. So this one's more of your creative one, and I think that it's a good start. I think it's really cool. Uh, Let me see here. Let me. All right. Let's see if we can get through one more. Ivans. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and play this. Good, better, best. Nice, that one looks cool. All right, good start on this, Ivan. Let's go through them starting over here. First of all, color palette's really cool. I like the blue. I like the like kind of seafoamy green that we have going on here. And then I like that the colors that you picked at the end for like your more personalized one. The biggest thing on let's start with the good, better, best. And the biggest thing here is also moving these off screen a little bit more. You could have been zoomed in here when you were like zoomed in on your composition when you were working, which you want to make sure that you're zoomed out and that you can see everything, especially when you're moving objects off screen here. So I would you're going to need to push this over here. But the biggest thing that I noticed is you've got the motion blur on here, which looks really good. The easing. Let's talk about the easing first. We need to work on the curves of the easing here, and so I would rewatch that section of how the easing has to happen, because what's happening here is your objects are overshooting where they need to go, and it looks like your curves are just moving above where the actual keyframe is on the graph. So like if I go here to the good, better, best, and we go to the best, and we look at the graph, and I bring this graph up, I should be able to draw a line from here. Oh, let me do this again. From here to here, from the first keyframes, from this keyframe right here to this keyframe right here, and this curve should not go past that line, right? This curve should not go past that line. That's what overshoot is, and so it's going to bring your object up above that point in space, right? It's going to bring it up above where its resting point is, which is not what we want. And then it's going to take a minute to come down here to be like at a stopping point. And unfortunately, that's that's why it's bouncing back and forth here. Let me move this. Let me get back here. But that's kind of why you've got this bouncing thing happening here. And then also we need to talk about the hierarchy. The hierarchy is opposite of what it needs to be, right? Good should be a scrawnier, like a thin text like this. The middle one should be a thicker, and then the third one should be the thickest one, right? To do the hierarchy. Definitely need to pick, I would get rid of both of these font choices of the good and the better, and just stick with this font choice right here. Of the word best, and change the weight and the size of it, right? You're gonna need to watch the design section of this one, because this is not an approved font. This one right here, and then this one, we don't do italics in class on the stuff. So you're gonna want to make sure that if you're picking this font, that's fine. Make sure there's no italics, and then making sure you're just rewatching the section about the design of this, because that's more of like the thing that I noticed kind of overall throughout here, is that like here as well, these are the type here is italics, and we're not using italics in class, so you need to change this as well on these. If we watch the fade one though, it fades on screen very well. You've got the good easing on the word fade, and it's even you've got the the layers of the AD and the E are all, how do I want to say it? My brain is going blank because we're right at the end of class. But staggered, right? The layers are staggered here, which looks nice. The effects that you have on the words here are good. You're going to want to add a capital letter right here, right, and right here. And then you're going to want to change the font sizes of these so that they're not so close to each other. You did a really good job of keeping it consistent and making sure that these lined up here, which not all the students always get. So really good job on that. I would just make these smaller fonts. And there can be a little bit more space in between the center there, but and then maybe changing the leading on your sentences here so it's not so far away from the top line to the bottom one. And that's all I would really change on this one. Getting rid of the italics, capitalization, and changing the leading and stuff. But as far as the animation goes, this one you did a really good job on. Let's see here. All right, cool. So we have, make sure this previous scene is fully faded off before this one starts animating in. And then, so you may have to shuffle some keyframes around a little bit. And then as far as this one goes, the text looks good. It doesn't, like when it's animating down, it doesn't overlap each other, which is really good. Just get rid of the italics here, and maybe you could pick a bolder version of this font, which would be fine. I would move all of it over to like this area right here, or even this area right here. It's kind of in an odd spot on this one. This specific square here is used for old televisions. So televisions with a 4:3 aspect ratio, which used to be those old glass televisions with the glass screen and stuff like that. So, lining it up with this one isn't as common anymore. So I'd line it up with either this line or this one right here. And then maybe drop it all down a little bit further here. And yeah, that's what I would do. I think that the text here is kind of hard to read when it's over the light like the green color, so you might want to update the color of the font as well here. But as far as the animation goes, it looks pretty good. Yeah, the easing on everything looks good. Give a little bit of breathing room between the top of this bar, essentially, and the text here. It doesn't have to touch, but it, you know, it looks good. It just looks a little comfortable, and we want to just give it a little bit more cushion there. And then your name here looks really good. You did a good job on this. You could change maybe the tiling or increase the, oh, what do I want to say? Like the resolution of the background here. But the name itself and the lighting that you have on this looks really nice. Maybe I would just change the material a little bit to be less reflective. And so it absorbs a little bit more of that light that you have here, because there's the rest of this looks really good. You know, like that your name is lit up really well. The camera animation looks, it's very subtle, looks really good. So you did a good job on that. You can even extend this a little bit more if you want to, but I think it's like 4 or 5 seconds. Three. You can maybe extend it a second. And then finally, this one is like a standard, you know, just fading on and off, which isn't bad. I would add to it, right? Get creative with this one. This one can be more fun, so I would definitely mess around a little bit with what you know and try and pick something that gives a little more interest to it. And then I would probably stay away from having your name in all caps unless you pick sans serif font, so a font without the little feet on it. Those fonts tend to look really good in all caps. This one's with the flourishes, especially on the R's, adds a little bit of extra space in between here, and it kind of can just be a little bit more jarring when you look at it initially. And then, so yeah, I would just undo all the capital letters here. Maybe pick like a sans serif font for this section. You could keep the serif font down here, and then just add something to this a little bit more to give a little bit more of a visual appeal. But it is a good start on it. The fading on and off here. Yeah, we can work on this a little bit more, especially when you start to learn a little more skills. But I'm going to stop here with you guys. I'm going to delete these ones because we already went through all of them. And I will finish going over the rest of these on Thursday's class, likely, and then any other ones that are going to be turned in by that time. And then we're also going to go over our next project on Thursday, where we're going to work a little bit more with the principles of animation. We're still going to work with like it's kind of going to have a similar theme to the ball, using a ball still, but we're going to be using it differently, and we're going to be hitting it with like a mallet and stuff like that. So we're going to talk more about that on Thursday's class. We'll go over the rest of the typography projects that are in, and yeah, and we'll see where we're at. And then the following week, I'll go over your guys' real and surreal projects. In the meantime, okay, several of you have talked to me about issues with Cinema 4D and stuff, so make sure that you guys watch the beginning of this video if you have more questions about that. And then make sure that you guys are turning in actual like rendered out videos and not the project files here. And then Maria, we're still going to get together in Discord, and we're going to have we can talk in Discord because I know you asked me to chit chat. I'm probably going to jump onto my laptop, so it might just take me a second. I'm going to take like a quick 10 minutes after class and go do a couple things, and then I'll hop right onto Discord and we can chat about your assignments and stuff. So other than that, do you guys have any questions or anything for me tonight? Pretty straightforward class, right? We're kind of getting in more to the meat and potatoes, a little bit more complex things that we're working with. Yeah, not a problem, Maria. And then Evan, if you get that re-rendered, submit it because you have until the 26th, and I'll go over it. Oh, let's see here. All right, guys. I will see you guys then in next class on Thursday. I hope you guys have a good Wednesday and a good rest of the night. I'm happy the streams are working now, right? Thank God. Dude, that was a struggle. So hopefully this thing works. Yeah, not a worry. Not a problem. All right, guys. Yeah, good night. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.